Got the top cord and the bottom cord and this king post laid out for this number 7 truss. Those are going to be put together with gussets just like the rest of the trusses, but that's where the similarity is going to end. This is going to be the truss that'll go on the end wall, and so it's going to have sheeting on it. So instead of running the diagonals on this one like I did the other ones, I'm going to run 2x4s vertical on 2-foot centers, and then we'll be able to nail and glue plywood onto one side. So this one's going to be a little flimsier when we tip it over the first time because it's not going to have the diagonals. It's going to be heavier because it's going to have a whole bunch more 2x4s on it. And then when we turn it over and put the sheeting on the other side, then it's going to be a whole lot heavier. So probably won't be able to handle that, just the two of us. I don't know. We'll have to see. But anyway, I got it laid out there. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put these gussets on the joints here where the top cords meet and where the top cord and the bottom cord meets, and that king post in the center, and then we'll start laying out the rest of the members that go in there. This will be the last one, yep. Well, now I got my work cut out for me. As I said, this truss is going to be different than all the rest of them. And I've got 2x4s here to go in to fit in for nailers here for the sheeting on here. This happens to be a one of in this instance, but if I was building a building from scratch, then there would be 2 of these, one on each end. But this is going to be the end piece. The other truss fits up against the wall that's there already on the house. Now, I don't know whether this chalk line here is going to show up or not, but there are 2 differences between this truss and the other trusses. One, of course, is the way these nailers go in there like this and sheeting on the other side. And the other is where that line is right there. I have to cut out for sleepers or lookouts, I guess you'd call them. So there will be 2x4s that lay in notches cut into this rafter, this top rafter here, and they'll be butt nailed in to the rafter inside of that one, the next one in, and then they'll hang out, and we'll take another 2x6 like this, and it'll be butt nailed into the end of the 2x4 to give my 2-foot overhang on the building. Like I said, if I was building a building from scratch, like I did the house up there, then trusses on both ends would be like this. But since I'm just doing one side's going to be closed in, this is the only one I'll need like this. So I'll get all of these cut to fit, get those nailed on. I've got gussets to nail those on with. Then we'll flip that truss over and work on the other side, and I'll get some wood for sheeting, get that nailed on there, and then we'll cut out, or maybe I'll go ahead and cut the notches out first and then cut the notches out of the sheeting after I get it on there. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Don't know what the order of operations is going to be exactly, but one way or another, that's got to be done. So the first step is going to be to cut and fit each one of these nailers in here. And again, it's going to be a pain because I've got to reach all the way across this table now to get those. I want to keep this bottom cord down here flush against my form here on the bottom so that it doesn't move and everything gets out of whack, because it's going to be hard enough to keep it from racking when we go to tip this over on the other side. Anyway, I guess I got my work cut out for me. Ha ha ha. Okay, that's the last of the vertical struts on this truss here. Got all the gussets nailed on all of them. I knew I was going to run out of glue with these. I was using that subfloor adhesive, and I went almost all the way down through, and I run out on the last two down on that end, and then these two here, which I couldn't reach from that side over there. So before I started, I went to the building supply store, and I was going to get some OSB sheeting to use to sheet this with, but of course I didn't have any at the building supply store. But I did get some more of this subfloor adhesive, this spray-on stuff. I got a bigger can, a little different brand, and it seems to be working better than that other stuff did. It goes on and stays foamy, and it's actually foaming out around the edge here where this gusset was that I put on. I always put lots of glue on there, and it always squeezes out stuff. I'm going to have to trim some of that up when the time comes, but I like to make sure and get enough on there. I'd rather have a little bit more than enough than a little bit less than enough. So I was going to flip this thing over and start sheeting the other side, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out on this side over here and cut out the notches for those lookouts. Well, I've got it here, and I can cut the notches out of this 2x6 here on the top cord, this top rafter, and then when I flip it over and put the sheeting on, I can just come back through and trim out the sheeting. And what I might do is just use the router to trim the sheeting out, just nail it on here flush with that bottom, and then have it hanging over here on the top cord, and then just run around it with the router with a cutoff bit on it, flush cutting bit. I don't know, we'll see when we get to that. I never exactly know what I'm going to do until it's done. And I got to say, I'm not grunting near as much as what this sounds like from what I was editing the film. The video is on. It sounds like just barely breathing and grunting like a pig, but this thing picks up the sound and amplifies it so much it just makes it sound like that. So I'm not wheezing and stuff near as bad as what it makes it sound. So I think I'm going to lay these lookouts out on 2-foot centers. So I'm going to cut the notches out centered on where these uprights are. That way weight on those is transferred down through this to the bottom cord and onto the top sole plate on that wall when it goes on there. I've got a cutoff stub of a commercial nominal dimension 2x4 I'm going to use. I'm going to sit it right here and project these lines out, these center lines that I had on here. I've got most of them already all projected out. So I'm going to center this on those lines, flush with the top of this 2x6. Actually, that's going to wind up being not 24-inch centers on there because of the angle that it's at. So I'm going to have to redraw all these. I have to change my reference points on all those. And you got to have it on 2-foot centers, otherwise it won't come out right on the plywood, on the sheeting when you put the sheeting on there. All right, change plan. Plan A didn't work. We'll go to plan B, and that'll work better. Yeah, that'll work better anyway because it gets a board up closer to this peak, but I don't have to cut into this gusset on the peak. All right, those are laid out. Now I got to figure out how I'm going to cut those. I guess what I could do, the fastest way, is probably just to set up the circle saw and just cut straight down in there like that, and then we'll get a saber saw and cut the rest of that out. All right, I got all the ones done on this side here with the straight cuts done on them. Now I got to figure out how I'm going to go dig out a saber saw, scroll saw or something and cut those out the rest of the way. But anyway, I'll get those done and I'll do the same thing on the other rafter there. Well, I went and dug out a saber saw or a jigsaw, whatever you want to call it. And then I went up and dug out a new blade. And we got a whole bunch of new blades from Harbor Freight a few years ago, in Judy's toolbox. And I brought it down here, tried it in the saber saw, and it wouldn't fit. It's got the wrong kind of mount on it. I know I've got some more scroll saw or saber saw blades around someplace, but I won't have a clue where to look right now. They always show up when I'm looking for something else. Anyway, I put that thing aside, and then I dug out a little Milwaukee Sawzall here, battery operated one. I got a pretty good blade on it. That's what I used up in the basement for cutting the pipe and some of the other things up there when I was putting the plumbing in, septic lines in and stuff. I brought it down here, and that works okay, except this blade is so wide here that you can't get it to turn in a cut very well. Anyway, it made a rough cut. It took quite a bit to do it. Well, I was going to go dig out my regular Sawzall, my electric one. And I got to thinking, I just use the circle saw and just got a whole bunch of kerfs in each one of these, knock them out with a hammer, and then I've got a sharp chisel over there in the shop. I'll go get that, and I can pare these sockets out with a chisel, and that's going a lot faster than trying to do it with the scroll saw or the saber saw or with the Sawzall. All right, that works good. And each one of these, the 2x4 fits in each one of these holes good now. So I'll go ahead and go get the chisel and clean out the bottoms of these holes. And then I'll slide this truss out and around a little bit so I can get to the ones on that other rafter. Well, I got all those notches cleaned out, cut out and cleaned out, and the 2x4 fits in them just perfect. So I flipped that truss over. Now I need to sheet it. I said earlier I went to town first thing to get some OSB at the building supply center, and they didn't have any. So I've got all that 1/2 inch plywood that I had last year that I stacked and stickered and dried out. I was going to use that, but I got to thinking when I moved all of that old lumber and stuff from around the back of the house to get access in there to those SIP panels, I thought I saw some OSB sheets in some of those stacks. So I just went back there and checked, and sure enough, I've got quite a few OSB sheets there. They've been stacked up for a long time, but they're still good. So I've got to go dig those out. Right now I've got those other trusses sitting on the forks on the Bobcat, so I'm going to have to figure out some place to put them. Don't need to take the Bobcat with the forks up there and dig through those stacks until I can get in there to where that OSB is, and then get, I think, 3 sheets down here for this, and then I'll need 3 sheets for that one sidewall on the house that I'm going to frame in. Oh, I guess I better get after it. Well, the weather's clearing up. It looks like we're going to get our week of nice weather, so hopefully that'll give me enough time to get all this stuff done. I've got the trusses done now, well, except for sheeting this one. They're ready to go on. The floor is done. I've got the sill plates and stuff down. We'll need to open up that add-on to the house there, and I've got to prep those SIP panels. Anyway, hopefully I've got enough time to get that done. This old fart doesn't have as much work to put out as it used to, but I'll do my best.